Here after a quick word from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NFL season's here. The NBA season's here. Hockey's here. And right now, new customers can bet just $5 and win $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to get started. That is FanDuel.com/UCSS to get in on the action on America's #1 sportsbook. And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in Coach Spencer to the show. Kevin Spencer, former coach for the Cleveland Browns, coach in the NFL for over a decade, and he's here to join us to talk a little Browns chaos today. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and I think it's closer to 3 decades.
Yeah.
3 decades.
Yeah.
Well, more than a decade
look,
is
you
3
see,
decades.
That gives you right there.
Put some respect on them years.
I did see the 2002 Special Teams
It
Coach
used to
of
like
the Year.
Jason's hair back in the day, but that's what it looks like now. 3 decades.
So
That's
Coach,
why we're at.
what do you make of the whole Brown situation right now? They changed play callers. Obviously, the success in terms of wins hasn't been there, but you still believe in
I
it,
don't
Coach
know. Where do you
Stefanski?
want me to begin? It's
Anywhere you want.
It's amazing that I guess a fan from afar, because I started my career here in '91 with Coach Belichick, so you always kept track of the Browns, and then you're in your career and you always stay in touch with your family and friends, and you come back and you want to be a Browns fan, and it's just dysfunctional at best, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I guess I've learned anything in the business is that you really don't know what's truly going on unless you're inside. Mm-hmm. So it's awful tough to make comments on things, but there's a lot of things that just don't seem to jive. So I'm just hoping that we have a 9-game schedule left, and I hope that we can do some positive things to finish out this season. Because of a long-winded answer, I apologize. No. The guys you worry about the most are the guys in the locker room. The Joe Paternos of the world, that are warriors, and you want them to step on the field knowing they got a chance to win a game, and we're not playing this thing out just to play it out. So I hope it gets better.
How does it affect guys in the locker room? Obviously, a lot of people can see it from afar, but you've been in those locker rooms, and when you putting in that much work, I mean, you putting in, the coaches are there, they're burning the midnight oil. You're there early, you're leaving late, you don't see your family, and you don't get the payoff of the win. How does that affect you in your psyche?
I think coaches just coach. I think that's what you do. That's what you sign up for. I think the toughest thing is for the players, because they got to play the 60-minute battle when they're out there, and they're putting their, I don't want to say they're putting their lives on the line, but they're putting their well-being on the line. And you don't want to have them be put in that position unless you're really out there to win a football game and bust your fan and get after it. So those are the guys you worry the most about, I think. Coaches just, that's your job, that's what you're paid to do, and I think everybody's got, it's not really a job, it's a passion, and so therefore that's the way you approach it that way.
You've worked for so many different teams, so many different regimes, ownership groups. Can you explain good culture versus bad culture? What makes a good culture and ownership's role in setting a culture? Yeah,
I was just we celebrated the 20th anniversary of our Super Bowl team in Pittsburgh this past weekend. And it didn't take me much to figure out why we were so darn good. And there was about, between 30 and 40 players from that roster, primarily most of the coaches. Mr. Rooney was there. And it's pretty obvious that it's like we never left. There was a genuine love amongst the players. We had great locker room leadership. And it wasn't like Jerome Bettis or Ben Roethlisberger. It's guys that people don't know that are the glue that held the locker room together. You could just tell the coaches, it's like you never missed a beat. So it's just something that's there. And I really do think it starts at the top. You look at the Rooney family and the Steelers. They've had one ownership group. They've had 3 head coaches. They probably had at best maybe 2 general managers. So there was continuity there. There's a philosophy there, and that's what they adhere to, and they don't get off that plan very often because it's been one of success. So it was like, holy smokes! It's just, you walked away from it saying, man, we were the most blessed human beings in the world to be part of all that.
I've talked to people at the Browns who say, why is it the Steelers and the Ravens draft the same players every year? They find the guys in the draft that fit their system. And it just, Cam Hayward, maybe Jack Sawyer is going to fall into that eventually. But they just, they draft the same dudes over and over. It sounds so simple. Why can't the other teams figure that out?
I guess it's, I can remember when we first started with Coach Belichick, he brought in all the scouts, and he made them go through as if they were coaches, because he wanted a scout to know we wanted this in a 3 technique. This is what we needed in a receiver. This is what we needed in an outside backer. So when the guys went out on the road, they knew that was the specific that they were looking for to fill the bill. I guess it is a square peg in a square hole, and that's where it starts. And you have those freakish athletes that come through and we're going to take this guy no matter what. So I think it starts, with the head coach and at least Bill telling everybody this is what we're looking for in a player. I mean, Kevin Colbert was like that at the Steelers. That very specific in what they're looking for in players, and I think the character of the players and where they're coming from. I just heard a radio thing today from the Pittsburgh station. They think Sawyer might be the steal of the draft, and who would have ever thunk that that this kid would turn out to be that guy? But I guess it's the tangibles you're looking for, and the intangibles, and probably the intangibles might be the most important.
When you look at a head coach, and obviously you worked for close to 3 decades, as we now established, for a bunch of different ones. What are the traits that you think are most common among the successful head coaches in the league?
Well, I think it's obviously you have to be proficient in coaching, whether you're an offensive guy, a defensive guy. But I really think it's about establishing relationships. I think there has to be, my way or the highway mentality with some flexibility in there. I think Coach Cowher probably would have been classified as a player's coach, but he also could pull somebody. It was Hines, Ward, or Ben, or even Jerome. We probably didn't have to do that, Jerome, very much. But you cross the line, and there's going to be a price to pay for it. So I think it's establishing discipline, a consistency. I think treating men like men. Yes, sometimes we forget that players they're not supermen. They have wives, they have children, they have these problems and that problems. And I think you have to always remember that they're guys. And if you treat men like men and respect the man, then I think you're going to get, even in the NFL, you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of a player because they know they care about you. So I think there is that affection, respect, and also leadership. The guys they're going to know that this is what he's all about.
How do you feel analytics played a role in some of the things you did in the past, and do you think it's evolved and changed, or just say the word analytics and let me hear what
I'm not sure that back in the day we could spell that word. I think you always had that deal, like I know Coach Belichick was big on that. He used the word quattro when he was telling Josh, you got 4 downs, and he let him know, like on 2nd down, that you're going to have. Now, where Bill got that from, I don't know, but I think it was the communication aspect. So I think when we first started out, I don't think analytics, other than probably being smart in situational football, obviously the clock, your timeouts. I think you always had. Russ Grimm was probably the best guy that Coach Cowher had, because he, and here's this big rough and gruff, hog from the Washington days, but he was our analytics guy relative to game management. And so I think there were scenarios where Coach Cowher would get caught up in a game, and Russ would say, "Hey, Coach, this is think about this, think about that." So that's the most I can remember about analytics, was just managing the clock, managing the timeouts, managing situational football, but not to the extent that you hear about nowadays, where you have a guy on the sideline with a 3-ring binder, and he's right next to the head coach, and this is collegiate level and professional level, and thumbing through the book, and I'm not to say that there isn't a value in that, but I still think, football guys have to be football guys, and sometimes you make decisions based upon the heart and not so much the head, and knowing your team and knowing what your team can do best. So I probably wouldn't be the best person to ask about it, because it just wasn't. You practice hard, play hard, and then good things are going to happen.
What's your best Belichick story?
Oh, good Lord. All right, this is a great story, I guess. Bill, back in the day, used to wear the rubber suits. And they used to call him, it looked like, a glad bag or something. And he, as you well know, he would cut up everything. So one time we were out of practice, and this is back when practice was practice and there was no limitations placed on practice.
It was 2 days.
Real 2 days. And he had on a long sleeve rubber top and a short sleeve over it. So it's so you're thinking, okay, what? And I even looked at him and said, "What in the world, Bill? You look like heck." And one of the reporters came up to him in a post-practice deal and said, "Coach Belichick, we got to ask, what was that all about?" He says, "Well, you know what? Today was a full pad day, and it's 90 degrees, 90% humidity." And he said, "I wanted to feel how hot the players felt."
Wow.
Because he knew that if he was starting to feel a little woozy, then he would back off. And I think probably the great thing that he did, coming out of the Parcells mentality, was he learned how to adapt practices, adjust practices. Maybe not so much in the Cleveland days, but certainly in the New England days. So that's the best story, where he had a reason for everything he did. He didn't go off half-cocked and do something preposterous to make, hey, look at me type of thing. That was a definitive purpose, that he wanted to know how the guys felt, because the guys have to practice, and they're practicing in that stuff.
I've always wondered this from a special teams coaching standpoint. We react every Monday to the game, and if Andre Schmidt misses a kick like he did against Cincinnati,
fire the
could have won
kicker.
the game, we come in and like, it's Bubba Vendrone's fault. You got to fire the special teams coordinator. You obviously coach special teams at the highest of levels. You won the 2002 Special Teams Coach of the Year award. What do you do with the kicker on a day-to-day basis, or do they have their own routines and
Yes.
you're just kind of,
Yeah,
guiding them? I'm just always curious how
they
that,
have their
that
own
kinda
routine,
works.
and especially nowadays, a lot of these kids have been doing this since they were little guys. They might have started out as a soccer guy, and they had not only their high school coach, but they had a kicking coach. So they generally know the specifics of how to, kick a football. And I think when they miss, they know. And so to go up and get after him and call him names and make fun of his mother, I mean, that's not gonna make him a better kicker. They would know. And so you'd say stupid stuff, but I think it was meaningful. We're gonna need you at some point today, so you got to have a short memory and get back on track. But it's when you get them at that level, they know where their plant foot should be. They know how they should swing through the ball. They know how they should adjust if it's a bad snap and the holder hasn't adjusted the laces. So I think it's just putting confidence back in, hey, you know what to do, let's get it done.
But
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, just firing the kicker all the time is, and a lot of times you'll say, well, what, a guy makes a mistake on a hands team or something. I'm absolutely telling you. Or how about this year in football, where a young man let the ball go into the end zone, the returner, and didn't secure the football? Well, you know how many times, I wish I had a nickel for every time he was in a meeting told about the rules and walked through the rules. So that's still the human element you're dealing with. That's probably a 22-year-old kid who hadn't played special teams since he was a middle schooler. Now he's thrust in this role, which is incredibly critical, and he made him, it's an error. They're human beings, they're not Supermen. They're going to goof up. And to say fire the coach or fire the player, I guess, there's always that deal, make an error, but don't make a repetitive error. So if a guy makes a repetitive error, you're probably going to have to fire him at some point, because here's a coaching cliche, he either doesn't know or he doesn't care.
So
and either way, you're going to get fired.
Why don't teams hire kicking specialists?
I've heard you talk about that on the radio.
It drives me crazy that, there's an assistant defensive line coach to the assistant defensive line. You've got 30 coaches in the building, but nobody who specializes in kicking. It's not Bubba's fault that the kid missed the kick. But, I mean, golfers may know their
have a swing coach.
They still have a swing coach. Why don't more NFL teams invest?
How did Bubba make his living kicking the ball or covering the kick?
Exactly. This blows my mind that in a league where all these games are decided by 3 points or less, that they just flippantly treat the kickers like they're aliens.
And I think you got a legitimate point, but I've been around those kind of guys, those kicking coaches, and sometimes they're in it for the wrong reasons. The kicking coach, or it's my agenda. And you know how it is, Jason, in coaching, you have to have everybody on the same page. So if Bubba had the right kind of guy that he could try, I think when Cade York was here, they actually, the second time, I think the team brought back Cade York's kicking coach. So now Mike prefers the kicking coach, and maybe Mike wants things done a certain way, but now we have the guru over there in the corner. So I think that it's got to be a compatibility issue and being on the same page issue. And you don't want, there's certain tenets I'm sure Bubba has about kicking that he wants, that maybe not necessarily how to kick the ball or the mentality kind of thing, but you don't want some guy over there, hey, come here, I got to tell you, Bubba really doesn't know what the heck he's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why maybe. And I don't know if they want to invest, because the kid. Well, that's just the kickers. We're not going to invest another $200,000 to hire a coach. So
that blows my mind. It's the difference in winning and losing.
And I think it's more
quarterback coaches.
When scouts go on the road. I wanted scouts. That's why I think they need to spend the special teams coaches out on the road. There's a lot. Darren Simmons at Cincinnati is probably one of the best in the business as a special teams coach, but an evaluator of talent. You look at the guys that he's had there. Kind of no-name guys. Yeah. They come out of nowhere because he really knows, because he was a kicker at Kansas State, so he knows a little bit about it. But it's a great point, and I think it's a point well taken, and I just think it's got to be that we all have to be on the same page, and we don't need someone over here telling the kid something different than what his position coach is telling him.
What do you think is, in general, the biggest difference between the players' mentality when you coached in your heyday than what we've seen now? Is it a huge difference, or the way they go about the game? And specifically, we talked about big guys, offensive line play. You know, either you believe that offensive line play is down, or defensive linemen are just really good.
I think that the biggest thing you've noticed is that the bigger, stronger, faster mentality. I think that truly those guys are freakish athletes, and it's, for DeJuan Jones to hold up against Miles is it tells you how good DeJuan's in, if we can keep him healthy, but he's a really gifted athlete himself. So I think the athleticism of the athletes is probably the biggest difference I've seen over time. That they're just, and that's everybody. But you know what? Everyone thinks that players. Well, they see things, and what they've seen in the media and the news is, what an idiot that guy is. Doesn't he know this? But I'm telling you, 99.9% of those guys are warriors, and they take a lot of pride in what they do, and they're very athletic, and they really care a lot. So I don't know if the athlete has changed a bunch more. Even the guys that get paid. I still think when they step inside that white line, they're incredibly ultra competitive human beings. They're just, back in the day when Clay Matthews was here, a little bit different, and he was a freakish athlete when he was here, but just different athletes nowadays, I think, is the biggest thing.
We had Leroy Hort on earlier, who I know played with the Browns when you were there. We talked about with Leroy just the quarterback situation. A lot of fans, including some of us, want to see Shedeur Sanders. They have Dylan Gabriel in there. And he said a coaching staff will never just put someone in there to see what they got, unless they feel they're ready.
Yeah, and I
Do
think
you agree with that?
Yeah, it's amazing that I probably listen to way too much talk radio than I should, because it's just like you want to get on the phone and just say, are you really? Did you really just say that? Or I understand if it's somebody in Medina that called in and said something. Well, that's their right to say that. But when you have people that are representing the game or the sport, you would like them to be just a tick more accountable for what comes out of their mouth. But it's if Shedeur was ready to go, he'd be in, because Coach Stefanski, they all want to win there. And this isn't something like, well, he's not my guy, he's your guy, blah blah blah. I mean, we could debate why did you take two rookies. That's a debatable point, I think. But the fact that he's not playing, I think, is probably because he's not ready to play yet. And Gabriel's had four starts. So I think he needs a little bit more time before we, anoint the other guy and give him an opportunity.
I want to go back to ownership. Have you ever seen owners sit in the meetings on Fridays and Mondays, pre-gaming?
Or did you ever see a female owner on the sideline with an earpiece in her ear?
That's wild too.
Yeah, Mr. Kraft used to sit in darn near every meeting.
Did he?
Yeah, and see, he came down and he would always sit in the back. Was not this, a distraction. Never said anything. And I don't think he was there because he's checking Bill out or that kind of thing. I think this is his team. And I don't think, he owns the team, but this is his team. These are his guys. And he had a really special relationship with a lot of those guys. So, but he was always there. And I can't think of another. I think you always wanted to, for me as a special teams coach, I always wanted the head coach to be in there, because that speaks volumes to the team. Unless it's Bill Cowher, and then I would just prefer that he wasn't in, because he would take over the darn meeting. But I think that Mr. Kraft might have been the only owner I've ever seen do something like that.
But he just sat in the back room? Just
sat in the back room, and
do you have a relationship with Nick still, Saban?
Oh yeah.
Do you think he'll ever coach again, or do you think he's done?
Boy.
I only ask that because
no, I wonder if LSU, because I think about it a lot too. I just think it's, Nick always talked about the process. And honest to God, he didn't talk a lot about winning. It was the process, and if you followed his process, you would win on the field. And I think it was also about, working hard, do the right thing. And now with the NIL things and kids coming in, and I want to play right away.
Yeah.
I think he's got a problem with, he can't be the kind of teacher that he wants to be, because he's really teaching men to be men. Now, granted, he would like to see them all go on and become, an NFL football player. But I think he took a lot of pride in the guys and what kind of men they were, and husbands and brothers. And I think he doesn't know if that environment that's presently in college football would allow him to be that kind of guy.
when you look at the Cleveland Browns, it's like a 95. My family is diehard Browns fans. We used to have every single team picture from like 1989 all the way just put up in it. And so when you look at that, the team picture, you start to point out the different coaches that went on to do great things. When you were on that staff and you were with some of those individuals, did you guys kind of know that you had the potential to have a lot of guys from Saban and other guys that would go on to do great things as coaches?
This is like asking you, did I think Brady as a sixth rounder was going to be who he was? But no, Nick carried himself in a certain way. He was a head coach at where was he? Was it Kent State or was he Toledo? And then
Kent, both. No, Nick. Yeah, Nick was at Kent.
So he had a little bit of that demeanor. Not that he was threatening Bill or anything, but I guess you kind of knew that they were excellent teachers. Kurt Ferentz came in, and you kind of knew right away that he was a heck of a line coach. Never raised his voice. Was a great teacher. We had so many excellent coaches that were there. That I don't know if you ever looked at it and said, "Holy smokes!" I remember when Nick. We were getting ready for that one year. We were in the playoffs. He was accepted the job at Michigan State. So he's really juggling two balls in the air right now. So he's doing his Michigan State stuff, trying to pull that together, recruitment, and making sure that we were ready to play in the playoffs. So I don't know. I was in awe of all of them because I was the young guy in the group, and they were just like they had forgotten more than I probably still don't know right now. So, but not sure I've ever knew that Nick was going to be the greatest collegiate football coach ever, right. And they got a statue in front of Bryant Stadium, and it's Nick Saban. I didn't see. Just like I didn't know Brady was going to be the GOAT.
Right. What are your memories or recollections of the last season here in '95 and the team moving?
Well, Jason, I got out of here. My last season was the '94 season, '95 playoffs. '95. So I took a job with the Raiders. To be their special teams coach. So I left after the playoff run. We beat the Patriots here, and then we went and lost to Pittsburgh. So that was my last things. But you stay in touch because they're still your guys. It's still your team, so to speak. So they got off to, if I recall, they got off to a great start.
Yep.
And then I think they had Mr. Modell announce the move, and then the wheels came off the cart at that point. And I don't know if they lost the game to Detroit. Barry Sanders went off, and then after that, it was hard to, guys. It's tough enough to keep guys' attention focused on what it takes to win, and and then now you don't know what your future holds. Well, where am I going to be? Am I going to be able to go with the new team, or where am I going to live? Where are my kids going to go to school? So it was a lot of crazy stuff, but I wasn't here when that happened. But a lot of the guys that I coached with were, and it was tough.
You talked about continuity earlier, and I'm just curious from a big picture standpoint. I think we all like the word continuity, but sometimes continuity, if the results aren't there, just for the sake of continuity, can be counterproductive. When you look at the situation, we could use Cleveland as an example, but I'm not talking about Stefanski and Barry in particular, just in general. When you have back-to-back seasons that just don't go the way you planned, and the Browns won 3 games last year, they have 2 wins now. Where do you fall on the spectrum of continuity just because continuity in general is a good thing versus continuity when the results don't match keeping continuity?
I think whatever you do, you better be doing something, continuity or not, that's going to give your team the best chance to win. I think that's what it's got to be. I don't think, we've always done it that way, so that's the way we're going to do it. Well, this is a really ebb and flow type of situation, week to week, season to season. So I think you have to be consistent as a leader. These are the rules. This is how we're going to do things. I just think the guys need to know, even these guys, professionals, need to know that this is what we're all about, and this is acceptable or this is not acceptable. But I think you have to change what's going to give the guys the best chance to win, offensively, defensively. So I think those are things that have to, have an ebb and flow to it. But I still think there has to be, the guys need to know that this is what we're all about, and it starts at the top. And it's, whether it's your owner, who, I don't know if the owner's the guy, or it's got to be the coaching staff, I think, where you got to have some consistency throughout.
Kind of related. We've got to wrap, right?
Yeah, time for one more, yeah.
When do you know it's time to fire a coach?
They always say when they lose the locker room, and I think, and I don't know, and you know when that's going to happen. I've been in a few of those locker rooms where you had 4 or 5 games left to go, and the cars are packed and warmed up in the parking lot. And you just knew that was happening. So I think that when the message is not being heard, and then you know it's not being heard because you're not seeing it on the field. So I think that that's probably a time where you lose the guys, and the bulk of those guys are going to be back next year. So you don't want, they're going to leave with a bad taste in their mouth and bring that same thing back the following year. So I'm guessing that's when, you know, it's a tough thing where you just, the guys aren't listening to the message anymore.
Awesome. Well, Coach, we appreciate you coming in. This has been a
great.
pleasure. Some terrific insight. That is
Thanks
Coach
very
Kevin
much.
Yes,
Spencer, former
appreciate
Browns
it.
coach, 3 decades worth in the NFL, and a Super Bowl champ, even though he's not wearing the ring right
No,
now. So, Coach,
I live in Cleveland now. You can't walk around with that on your finger very often.
fair enough.
Right.
Awesome. Coach Spencer, thanks for coming in.